Thanks for joining us today, guys, for securing federal funding for critical public safety communications system. This will be a short, fast-paced webinar with two presenters, Amanda Wood, who is our grant writing specialist located in Washington, D.C., and Jeff Palmer, who will be discussing the Genesis products and the LRAD systems. The webinar will be short, 30 minutes, and everyone will be muted. There's the ability for everyone to ask questions, and there'll be a short period, about 10 to 15 minutes after the presentation, where the presenters will answer any questions submitted during the webinar. To submit a question, there's a small little box next to your chat where you can submit a Q&A, and please submit the questions, and the moderator will go ahead and line them up for the end of the presentation. So today we're really focusing on three things for you guys. We want to focus on learning, understanding, and ensuring how to use and better take advantage of the grant process and the funding that federal agencies provide specifically for public safety communications procurement. We want to understand also the roadmap for the fiscal 2021. We have a new roadmap, federal funding, and future economic packages that are coming through will all be discussed. We want you to understand what's out there for you to be able to utilize, and we want to ensure that if you're eligible, that you are able to apply and receive federal funding for your project. Like I mentioned earlier, the webinar will be muted. Chat will be available. I'm located that now, so now I can see you guys with the no sound. Sorry about that. And if you guys have any questions, there's that little box over there shown on the screen that would allow you to submit them for the period ending the webinar. This webinar will be recorded. We will be sending out an email to all the participants that will include a link to the recording, as well as some of the more important materials presented here today, including a list of the applications of some of the products we're discussing, some of the steps for applying for, writing, and for grants, and some contact information in case you want to utilize or you have any other questions. With that said, our first presenter, Amanda Wood, she's a senior government affairs consultant at Becker, and she's based out of Washington, D.C. She has extensive experience. She's a U.S. Senate legislative director, and she's our expert in federal funding streams here for public agencies.
Thank you, Ricardo. Can we go on to that first slide? Great. So, hello, everyone. Good afternoon from DC, and good morning to those of you who are on the West Coast. I'm really happy to be here because I have some good news. I think that sometimes there's an impression that the federal government does not provide, a great deal of resources to local governments for technology needs. But I want to reassure you that there are about 1,000 grant programs every year administered by federal agencies. Not all of them, of course, apply to the needs that you all have, but many will. And each year they provide about $400 billion to public agencies, states, local governments, law enforcement agencies. And so I'd really like to help you get your fair share of those dollars. Next slide. We'll start with a little bit of a federal funding 101. There are two main ways that federal funds go to public agencies. One is formula funding. You all may receive formula funds through programs like the Community Development Block Grant or the Burn JAG program. And those are funds that go down to municipalities based on statistics like population, poverty, crime statistics, things like that. And then there are also competitive funds. And we're going to be talking primarily about competitive funds today. Those require the completion of an application in order to receive the funding. Next slide. So we get very creative in how we fund some of these projects. As Ricardo said, my background is Capitol Hill, and I worked for a number of years for a senior senator from Florida, helping Florida entities get funding for essential needs. And so over the past 20 plus years, of working inside the government and then with local governments outside the government as a lobbyist and federal funding consultant, I think I've found where most of the money is hidden, and I'm happy to help lead you to it. So for our purposes, you know, most federal funding is probably going to come through the Department of Justice or the Department of Homeland Security. Once in a while, we can get creative with use case and get funding from other agencies like the Department of Transportation or HUD, and I'm happy to work through those with you. I think that there's another sort of misimpression about federal funding that people have, and that's that if you apply for multiple funding streams, you're going to look greedy. My experience has been that federal funding begets federal funding. So if you get some funding and you are a good steward of that funding and maintain a good relationship with the federal agency and spend it well, they want to keep giving you money. So there's no penalty for applying to multiple federal funding streams from multiple federal agencies or within the same federal agency. And I think I have to look at that list, but I'm pretty sure that every last one of these opportunities that I'm going to share with you today has no match requirement. So that's good news also. Next slide. So I have some samples of the kind of grants that can provide support for local acquisition of public safety, public safety technology in general, and more specifically communications. Do not feel like you need to become an expert on these funding streams. That's what I'm here for. Just want to give you a sense of what's out there so that we can work with you directly in order to find which one's going to be the best match for you. So some examples of DOJ funds that support these sort of purchases all the time are the BURN-JAG formula grant. You're probably familiar with that one. About 2,000 agencies receive that every year. The Burn Criminal Justice Innovation Grant, Strategies for Policing Innovation, Community Policing Development, Project Safe Neighborhoods, if you're working with a U.S. attorney on projects, and then also the Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation, which if you're a tribal law enforcement leader, it's open right now and provides $80 million a year for needs like this. Next slide, please. We love using DHS funding, and Congress really likes to fund DHS programs. So we are on FEMA's authorized equipment list. If you're not familiar with it, that's the list that FEMA puts together that includes all the items that can be purchased using DHS preparedness grants. That's the large grant program. The two biggest components of that each year are the State Homeland Security Grant Program and the Urban Area Security Initiative. I'm really pleased that Congress made the decision back in December and was signed into law the FY21 appropriations process, which included, for example, a $90 million boost to the UASI program. So all of you will be eligible for either the State Homeland Security Program or the Urban Area Security Initiative. The Urban Area Security Initiative applies to the roughly 36 highest threat urban areas in the country each year. I've been talking with DHS over the last week. By statute, they're required to push those funding allocations out within 60 days of Congress passing and the president signing their funding bill, which will put us, from what I've heard, they're aiming for the third week of February. So this is a really good time to be thinking about use of DHS funds. It requires a little bit of navigation, but just know that I'm here to help you navigate the process, help you language for your application, put you in touch with the right people. So just know that I'm that resource for you. Let's go on to the next slide. Here, we'll dispel yet another rumor. I think maybe you all have received some funding in the past, or your predecessor did in your position, and you all weren't able to expend it for any reason, or you changed your mind about what you wanted, or there were procurement issues, and that federal money was never drawn down and spent, and you're probably thinking that it's gone by now. It's not, unless it's been a very long time. Generally speaking, it's still available to you. And some people think that, the agency's going to give me a hard time about reprogramming it. That's actually not the case. When the Secretary of Transportation, perhaps Secretary Buttigieg, once he is confirmed, goes up to the Hill to ask for additional funding for the next fiscal year, it's really hard for him to ask for more when the funds haven't been fully expended from the prior year. So just know that at these federal agencies, they want to push that money out. So we can very often, if we identify funds that you haven't expended, we can very often help you approach a federal agency, reprogram it, and do that. It's actually the fastest way to get money. Do it sometimes in a matter of weeks. So I'm happy to help you with that as well. Next slide. So one of the things when we're applying for federal funding that we talk about a lot is partnerships. You all, the really vital technology you want to purchase for communications needs is probably not siloed to just one use case. You may be using it in cooperation with other entities within your community at different sites. And so I think it's really important to establish those sort of partnerships so that when you approach the federal government for funding, you say, hey, we've got a regional approach, or we've got a citywide approach, or we're happy to share this asset with our neighboring county in the event that they need it. So I think it's really important, not only because some grants require that support, but I think it really enhances your application, makes you eligible for more things. So as you're thinking about, let's say you're a public safety professional, you may want to coordinate with your local fire department or transportation authority or economic development authority, or certainly emergency management in the case of those DHS funds. Go on to the next slide. So I say that, federal funding is always in season. There's always something we can be doing. The exact dates for things, people are always like, well, when does that grant come out? We don't always know. One of the reasons we don't always know is because Congress is sometimes a little delayed in passing the bills that fund these programs. Election years sometimes shift timelines. Very few federal programs have, like the DHS funds, by statute, a time by which they have to push those funds out to municipalities and counties and law enforcement agencies. So I would say there's always something we can be doing. So at any point during the year, you can speak with me and we can put together a funding options report and sort of map out what you're going to be pursuing. We can go ahead and establish community partnerships at any time. Before grant solicitations come out, we can do calls with federal agencies and your congressional delegation to pitch the project and receive feedback. Once the grant comes out, they don't allow that at the federal agencies. So we like to do that early. And I think it's a great advantage when, a program manager at a federal agency is familiar with the project before submission. Once the grant solicitation is released, I will prepare the language you need for it. A lot of what's in a grant is about your local need and making your local case, but the technical aspects about, what you're going to be purchasing, how it's going to be effective, those sorts of things, I'm happy to provide you with that language. I always like to engage their congressional delegation. I'm a lobbyist and a federal funding consultant, and my background is the Hill. And so I think it's always very important to talk to your senator's office, members of Congress, prepare draft letters of support for them, prepare talking points. They want very much to show you value and to bring money back to their constituents in their community district. So they're eager to be helpful. So let's make sure we engage them. And their weighing in truly does make a difference. And then once you get the good news and the funds are awarded, we can help with the drawdown of the funds. We can make sure that there's as little red tape as possible. I think people worry a lot about federal funding being complicated and onerous, and what am I going to have to do, and what sort of permits am I going to need? I would say that for the vast majority of federal funds, it's not an issue at all. Now, if you're building a road or trying to move a historic building, it's a different story. But the sort of work that you all are doing, they really trust you all to implement these projects and are relatively hands-off. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Jeff, who is going to give us a little more information from Genesis.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Amanda. And Ricardo, if we can go to the next slide, please. So all I'm going to do is touch base today on a couple of our LRAD systems that are mainly being used by our police, fire rescue, and emergency management. We have other devices out there, but the ones we wanted to select today are the ones that pretty much every agency is going after right now, and just kind of break this down for you real quick. One of the most popular systems we have is the one shown here is the 100X Mag HS. This system here is a hand portable system with a magnetic mount. The magnetic mount is rated 600-pound pulling strength, so you can put this on various vehicles so that you can deploy it. And it also comes with a wireless kit. That enables your operators to talk anywhere from 150 to 200 meters away from the LRAD and provide your personnel safety between them and possible threats or wherever you want to set up your LRAD system. What is the difference between an LRAD and a speaker? We get that all the time. An LRAD shoots out sound more or less like a rifle rather than shotgun and sound. It's the easiest way that I can explain this is where we can shoot sound out at a 30 to 15 degree angle and be able to accentuate sound onto a targeted area. Our systems, our proprietary drivers send out very clear and concise messaging so that the people on the other end can actually hear what you're trying to tell them. We also have MP3s that are attached to our systems where you can pre-record messages. So no matter where you place this, or if you have certain situations, those pre-recorded messages can be used throughout your agency. We also have a record on the fly microphone that allows you guys to pre-record up to a full minute of messaging on the microphone, or you can talk live. And then on the wireless kit, you can attach that, like I said, to our various LRADs, and you can also do what we call daisy chain, where you could put wireless kits on various LRADs and have one operator operate multiple LRADs as long as they're within about a 200-meter radius. Next slide, please. So the LRAD applications are being very heavily used right now in law enforcement. I'm sure some of you guys have seen us in the news up there around Portland, Seattle, and various other places, and to include the Capitol that just happened here recently. We're also using these now in fire and rescue sectors for evacuation notices, getting information out to the public when they have emergency situations with these fires or even hazmat issues. And then we also have our LRADs at critical infrastructures to protect those various areas and be able to communicate clear and concise messages and warn people to get out of certain areas. Next slide, please. All right, all this slide depicts is a couple of the LRADs. I kind of went over the 100X already. We do have a standard unit, the first one shown there. That's our hand portable without the magnetic mount, without the wireless kit. It's just a hand portable unit, reaches out 600 meters, puts out 137 dB, continuous dB output. And, you know, it's very lightweight. It's only 15 pounds, so it's easy to pick up and maneuver. The second one is the one I already went over. The same thing, 600 meters out, 137 dB. It weighs a little bit more. It's 23 pounds when you put it on the mag mount, and it's 15 pounds when you take it off. And again, that one includes the wireless kit. The 450XL is being used a lot by our police agencies. These guys are mounting and dismounting them on their Bear and Bearcats or other various tactical vehicles. We have various mounts for this. We have Lenco makes a mount for Bear and Bearcats. Teradyne is now making mounts for Teradyne vehicles where we have tripods, magnetic mounts, and 2-inch hitch mounts. When it's away from the vehicle, we have a power pack that will allow your operators to power up the system using our power pack. This system will also accept the wireless kit to allow your operators to be able to communicate via wireless. This system actually reaches out to 1,700 meters. and it pushes 146 dB. These systems are being used a lot for crowd control issues, SWAT operations like serving warrants, getting people out of the area. You're able to actually push sound through building structures, through glass, through vehicles, and it gives your officers a big standoff when they're trying to communicate effectively with individuals on the other end. Next slide, please. This system here is being used now across all our National Guard and now some emergency services. This is our 360 Mob Kit. This kit was designed to be able to mobilize out there and use to communicate mass notification messages. This system has its own MP3 record on the fly microphone, but the suitcase that you see also has its own battery-powered system. So this can be powered directly off this suitcase system. It can also be plugged into 110, and it is rechargeable. This system will reach out 800 meters out. It's lightweight. We have a mast that's made by Blue Sky Mast, so you can erect the system up to 21 feet in the air and be able to deploy it pretty much anywhere you want. This is great for quick disasters and getting information out. It's also great for like sporting events, or if you have certain events out there and you're trying to communicate at 360 degrees. We just wanted to kind of touch base today on just a few of these items. These can all be purchased through the grants, along with some of the other equipment that we have. And Amanda, I will tell you, has done an outstanding job. I've worked with her now for almost 5 years, and she's helped a lot of departments out there getting these grants to purchase this LRAD equipment. Next slide, please. I just wanted to throw this up here real quick. This is something I share with all the departments that are going after grants. I'm not going to go through all these. You guys can take a look at them. But these are LRAD capabilities of how different agencies are using the LRADs. So it's not just used for one thing. A lot of police agencies and fire departments are using these for evacuations and for law enforcement operations on the wall side. But emergency managers are also using this, like I was talking about, for fires, search and rescue operations, and so forth. So what we've done is kind of put this together, and it's kind of a cut and paste type thing that you can use to justify your grants when you're trying to submit for your grants. And it shows the versatility of the LRAD equipment. Okay, I think I'm going to pass this on now to Amanda.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to wrap up a little bit with a few hints, and then really happy to take any questions you have. So I think, the federal funding process can be overwhelming and intimidating. I mentioned those 1,000 grant programs, not all of which apply to us, but just know that you don't need to be an expert on those. If you are pursuing funding for Genesis products, I am here to help you. So I can help to identify grant opportunities for you. I can help you with that reprogramming of funds we talked about. I'm here to write draft narratives and budget justification for your application and edit it. I would love to put you face to face with some of the program managers at federal programs to pitch your project. Let's get your congressional delegation on board, and then I can help with drawing down awarded funds. Next slide. And I think it's a really good time to be looking for federal funding. We have seen an unprecedented amount of federal spending in the past year. It's been very spendy here in DC, and for good reason. That CARES Act provided $150 billion to state and local governments with some flexibility in that. There was extra burn JAG funding last year. There was extra CDBG funding last year. Lots and lots of funding, and I think that's just going to continue. So the $1.9 trillion, and it's trillion with a T, a proposal that came out about 2 weeks ago is currently sort of winding its way through Congress. I think we'll consider that in February. And I think, we may not see the full $350 billion, but we're going to see a good deal of money. So I see regular fiscal year appropriations that provide funding for these sort of acquisitions every year. I see extra funding through a fifth COVID response bill. And then I see a really big stimulus bill, sometime a little later this spring that certainly will have technology needs as an allowable use. So it's a good time. It's a good time to be looking for federal funding. Next slide, please. So I've been doing this with communities for about 15 years since I left the Hill, and there are some things that always, we always find in really solid applications. You need to have a use case that aligns with federal funding streams. So often federal funding streams are not about your sort of wish list of technology. It's about, a solution to a local problem, and we'll help you sort of iterate that in such a way that it's very compelling to the federal government. Show a local commitment to this effort. We'll do everything we can to make the process easy on you. Just are going to need, your leadership to be willing to, to move this sort of thing forward. So just a little bit of a local effort and local commitment. We want you to use the tools to be your own best advocate. As I said, we can put together talking points. We can arm you with the right information. We just want to make sure that you are invested and want to use those tools. Really important to have those partnerships. Some of these grants require some of your data, perhaps crime data, other data. So just make sure you have your data all polished and ready. And have a solid history of solid stewardship of grant funding. I think most of you probably do. If you've really screwed up in the past with federal funding, we should still talk, because I think there are ways to rehabilitate that relationship so that going forward, you can continue to have some funding success. And then do leverage your DC-based elected officials. Make sure that we're engaging with your members of Congress and senators. They do want to help bring as much money home as possible. They're very personally invested in this, and they're so eager when we reach out to them and ask for their help. So make sure that you do that, whether you're working with me or not. And I think that wraps it up for me. We can go on to that last slide and some questions.
All right, thank you very much, Amanda. Guys, this is the contact information, and you guys, this will be sent out to everyone with our follow-up email. And right now, we're going to go ahead and take some questions. I do see that there were some submitted, so I will par these off to our presenters. And let's see, the first question here is there going to be a webinar for self-contained breathing device for firefighting? I'm going to go ahead. I can answer that one too, Amanda. So this, I'm sure you can contact Amanda for any type of funding, but specifically this webinar was a joint webinar with Genesis and Amanda to procure public safety communication devices. And so I would have to ask her. You have to talk to her offline for that.
Yeah, I can tell you really quickly, because I know you're interested in that. Your question. There are funds available for that. The FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant, it's open now. Go on that FEMA website. But I know we're focused on the Genesis products today, so I'm eager to help you if you want to pursue funding for any of those Genesis.
And then we did have another question about a fire engine, so I'm sure that fits into the same answer, I think. And then another question, Amanda, is there any cost for Ms. Wood's help?
There is no cost to you. So I'm really pleased that the folks at Genesis have, recognized that that local public safety, homeland security, police officials are sometimes struggling with their budgets. There's a lot of pressure on local budgets now. So they've retained me to help you. So there's no cost to you. As long as you're applying for funding for Genesis Solutions, I'm here to help you.
Excellent. Amanda, and how much time does it take to complete a grant application?
It sort of depends on the grant. But I would budget a few hours probably. We're going to arm you with as much of the grant response as we can. But there certainly will be some compilation of local data and things like that. But I work all the time with people who have never ever written grants. You do not need to hire a grant writer to do this sort of work. I will sort of walk hand in hand with you through the process. So, you know, anybody can do this, I promise.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. And then how do we know who to contact in our state for, say, Homeland Security funding?
I have all of that contact information. So I work really closely with the folks at DHS. So I'm usually able to get that really up-to-date information. So if you're interested in pursuing funding, let's work together. I will help you navigate that. Don't worry.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And we do have some other questions here that I think are related to some general grant, not related to Genesis products. And you guys can go ahead and contact Amanda. I'm sure she'd be happy to help you guys with those things as well. Thanks again, guys. Thank you for joining us. I think that will conclude our webinar. We promise to keep it short. Looks like we're just under 35 minutes. Everyone who attended will receive a follow-up email. Please do check that email. We'll have a link to the webinar recording, as well as a link to some of the information and data that is useful that was presented by Amanda and Jeff, including some of the other some of the other applications and contact information. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.